on YouTube.
Yeah, I'm also waiting for that.
There you go. We're on.
I see a black screen right now.
It usually comes through in a few seconds.
Yeah, I think so. Awesome.
It
I
says
have it too.
excellent. No, I don't
Excellent
have a
connection,
picture
right?
yet.
I do. But we wait for you to get it too.
Yep, it's in.
Awesome. Okay. Hello, good people of the internet. Hello, fellow doom scrollers. In fact, scratch all of that, Rocco. Hello, a better way community, right? That's what
Yes.
we're talking to. That's whom we're talking to right now. This
Yes.
is the first weekly live session of May 2025. What we're trying today is something that we have been wanting to do for quite a long time, but we're finally there. We're finally there. We want to showcase a product that we have built for a better way community, a product that we feel is the need of the hour, for lack of a better word. But I'll
The
let
need of the
Rocco,
hour. I like that.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And it's bite
Rocco,
size as well. It's not overwhelming. In fact,
yes.
it exactly addresses the fact that we need everything to be bite sized because we feel
Mm.
so overwhelmed. Yeah, yeah.
That's true. That's true. And it touches so many avenues of our lives. We've been building about this. We've been hyping about this for quite a few live videos that we've been doing lately. We introduced the idea last week. If you were in our last week's live session where Rocco and I talked about the user story of living across multiple lives and wanting to grow in all of those multiple lives in the modern day and age, how overwhelmed and how burnt out that can leave us to the extent that we might just end up showing up in each of those avenues without a clue. And none of us want that really. So, what we are building on today is that user story. We have some amazing archetypes that Rocco will walk us through. We have some protocols that we will talk about, which we feel we have already started to implement them in our lives, by the way.
Yes.
And we would want to introduce them to our community, and then we would really want you to engage with us. We would really want you to leave us feedbacks, perhaps as you go ahead and practice these protocols in your daily lives.
Yeah, yeah.
Rocco, would you have something to add?
Yeah, so I suppose let's bring people into this. So
Hmm.
some of what we talk about is philosophical, some of it is commentary on the present moment, some of it is personal development, some of it is about leadership, some of it is about critique of corporate culture. But where does that all come together? Yeah, it all comes together in this fact that we all kind of have to straddle all of
Hmm.
those projects, right? Why are we
Hmm.
listening to all the podcasts? Why are we on YouTube in the first place? Is because we're feeling we're struggling to manage all of those expectations of being, of becoming, of work-life balance, of not reaching the end of the year, feeling like we lost another year or lost another month. We want to like win in our projects of life, but our project of life is not one project. Yeah, that's it. It's multiple projects, and our definitions of what winning is and what success is broken. So many things are broken. So we doom scroll looking for answers, and then we get 1,000 competing things. There's no
Hmm.
single answer on everything, and then we either try and fail to implement that, and then blame ourselves and shame ourselves for it, or it's just another becomes another new thing to fail at. Yeah,
Yeah.
or we're kind of lacking how to pull it all together.
Hmm. Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so then we overwhelm ourselves invariably, and then it doesn't solve. And then we're back to the doom scrolling, looking for the next thing. We never quite land the
Yeah.
plane. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think we want to talk to that problem,
Hmm. Hmm.
and we want to make this at the level that somebody who is working a corporate job
Hmm.
can just pick this up as if this was another learning that they were getting from their team at work or from a consulting company. You've got to see us as a you've got to see us as a business, an organization in the corporate world
Hmm.
that just happens to have a vision of bringing soul back into business,
Hmm.
of
Hmm.
restoring our ideas of leadership,
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
of debunking, busting this myth of
Hmm.
work-life balance, and then how should we think about that instead, and then how do we live across those different contexts and bring it together. What can the business world teach us about such a project? Because there's some really good wisdom from
Hmm.
corporate that we want to incorporate. We don't want to just complain about it. And it's something lovely that I'm picking up watching the work of an old friend of mine that I'm reconnecting with. His name is called Craig Jamieson. He's a
Hmm.
designer. And he said, just as a rule, I like to not complain about something. I always like to critique it from an intelligent way, but always show up with some kind of advice, some kind of solution, some
Yeah.
kind of adjustment. We don't have to have the whole answer, but we can start the conversation. Yeah.
It's
So this is
1.0.
what this is.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 And I would just like to add something here, Rocco. A slight cheek and tongue, but
Tongue in
if
cheek.
to any, ah, yes, slight.
Cheek and tongue.
So it just happened.
Yes. Cheek and
All right.
tongue. Yes.
Yeah. I just wanted to say that if this sounds HRE to you, if this sounds like these are a couple of HRs talking about how to improve your life at work or how to be more productive at work, we are anything but that. We're anything but that.
Oh yeah.
I just wanted to say that with a cheek and tongue.
Tongue in cheek. Yeah.
Of course. All
Yeah,
right.
like,
Okay.
actually, if anything, this is what personal development at work should sound
Should
like.
look like.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So, can I share my
Yes, Rocco. I think we should get started
right?
with that. It's
So
1.0.
that's it. So, in the world of corporate,
Hmm.
we have things called product showcases. Have I shared the wrong screen now?
I could say Riverside, but
Yeah,
now
that
it's
wasn't
gone.
it wasn't the right one. I'll try
Okay.
again.
Hmm.
There you go.
That's it.
That's better.
The magical
So
PowerPoint.
that's
Hmm.
it. I do most of my design unashamedly in PowerPoint. It just kind of works for me, right?
And it's
So what
crazy how
we've got
good those
here,
designs are. Hmm.
yeah, that's one of my crafts that I'm happy to teach people. But we're
Yeah.
saying that we've got three project fronts here, right?
Hmm.
And we are called to actualize in the context of more than one of those fronts at the same time somehow. Not literally
Very
at the
true.
same time, but we don't want to do one at the expense of the other. And
That's it.
so
Yeah.
we've got, if I zoom in, we've got the three teardrops. It's the self, which is our personal development and our
Hmm.
personal fulfillment, our
Hmm.
container, which is our family, our home, and our relationships.
Yes.
And this could
Yes.
also be your structure at home and the holidays that you make and your finances, all of that as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then our work and our calling, you know.
Yeah.
This is not just spiritual. This is our practical, our diet, our discipline, our exercise, our all of this falls under self, container, or work.
And work may be divided into multiple works. Like you have a corporate job and
Your
you have
career,
a
your passions, but
passion.
then
Yeah.
also the craft and the calling that you apply to all of these. But now
Yes.
remember, just like a yin yang, there's a little bit of a dot in every single one of these. And what it suggests is that in self, there are
Hmm.
containers, there are relationships, there is structure there's craft and calling across all of these things. It's not
That's it.
just
True.
it's not
Yeah.
just one thing.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so what we've done is I've written a universal theory of everything, which is
Hmm.
really based on universal principles. They're
Hmm.
not based
Hmm.
on new philosophies. They're finding out why old philosophies didn't work and what's smarter anyway. And we
Hmm.
came up with a universal theory of everything. And this is just the integrate and actualize part of that. How do you implement it?
I
And it
love
looks
that. Yeah.
cool because it looks like a Greek word, like
Yeah.
like pronoia or something, yes, or
Yeah.
toia.
Yeah.
And this is how, in a better way, we are teaching this concept of the sacred game. The sacred game is how you weave these three things together, how you product manage your own becoming. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what we're saying is we're following the way, we're following our own star in the sky, we're we're maintaining our own coherence, and
Hmm.
we're applying all of this in the model of the master practice, which is agile.
Hmm.
Agile just means we keep going around in cycles, breaking
Hmm.
things up in cycles, yeah. And so
Yeah.
this now becomes how we live our life by design, by balancing these three things in a
Yeah.
tensegrity,
Hmm.
tension and integrity, and you try balance that impossible paradox all the time.
Hmm.
And that's
All
really
the time.
just, yeah,
Yeah.
that's really
All the
just what
time
we're doing.
across. Hmm. All the time
Yeah,
across all the containers really of your
that's
life.
it.
All the different
Across
avenues
let's
of your
call
life.
them fronts, yeah.
Yeah. The fronts.
Let's call them the three fronts, yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so we're just going to zone in for a second on this bit,
Hmm.
the agile. And to explain Agile to everybody, what is Agile? Idiot.
Did we just
Oh
pause
my
the
God.
live? I think it's
Oh,
still
it's okay.
working.
It's okay. It's okay.
Working.
It's okay.
Yeah. I think it's going through still.
It'll pick up again. I'm meant to stop the sharing. Oh my gosh. Classic.
This is so good, man. These kinds of moments actually make me feel alive, you know. It's good. It's
Because it's
good.
funny.
It's funny, yes, and it's
It's
supposed to
funny.
be, right? It's supposed to
Um,
be.
so just before I killed the video there, we were looking at that diagram of what's the sacred game. What are we teaching in a better way? We're teaching how to play that sacred game, how to get all those three things in balance. And what part of it was how we follow the way, how we pick what our star in the sky is. That's why
Awesome.
authenticity is so important. That's why consciousness is so important. It's what it's not just building your will, it's making sure that whatever you think is your will is actually
Hmm.
aligned with your truth. Yeah. Something that
Hmm.
really, if you chase this and you make this your goal in life, it's different to an ambition. It actually becomes actualization. That's the plan. Yeah. And then repo management on the other side was about this idea of seeing your whole self as a kind of a system or a product that's being built with multiple streams. Yeah.
Hmm.
And then you're checking little bits out at a time, and then you're doing pull requests to merge those bits back into the main code. You're building
Hmm.
yourself like a product.
Hmm.
And Agile is the master practice that you apply on how you manage the cadence, the cycles, the ceremony, the flow. It's a lot of complexity, and Agile is this way of doing things wherein you break your life up into lots of small increments.
Yeah.
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 And in those increments, you refine and you iterate towards better.
Hmm.
So you give yourself
That's the
frequent
idea.
opportunities to revise what you were doing, why you were doing it, improve your language, improve your intentionality, improve your practices, refine them, and you're slowly, iteratively getting towards better.
Yeah.
It's that bow and arrow principle of Rama.
Hmm.
He's aiming
Hmm.
for perfection, yeah. And each shot, each round, each cycle in your agile cycle becomes another opportunity to reset, re-aim, get closer to the mark, and so on.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
we're talking about. That's the
Hmm.
agile piece. And in that agile framework, there's this thing called a showcase. And the showcase is now when a development team has gone off and worked on something, they bring it back to the group and they say, we're now going to showcase how we got here, what the thinking was, the problems we were trying to solve, what our process was of thinking, and then what we've got to show in the meantime. And then here's something you guys can look at, test, break apart, challenge, critique, kick the tires. Let us know questions, adjustments, and then let's all
Hmm.
take it out into the wild and test it in
Test it
prod
on
in our
prod.
lives, and then
Yeah.
feed that information back to us so we can make a 1.2 or a 1.4 or a 2.0. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. That's it.
that's what
That's
we're
it.
doing
Yeah.
today.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Really. Hmm.
Chetan, have
So
you
for
got folks following live that are chatting or any such thing?
I have some people who joined live but have now left, but there's no chat right now. That's all right. We should keep going ahead with it.
Yeah.
So, um, I wanted to add something to that, Rocco, the agile bit. So, actually, if someone has never really practiced agile in their corporate life so far, they might not be aware of agile. But I hope what Rocco explained helped you understand better. It's basically the idea of breaking down your project, whatever project it is you're working on into smaller chunks in terms of work also, but smaller chunks in terms of time as well. So you work in terms of sprints of 2 weeks or 4 weeks each. You plan, you build, and then you retro. You see what you could have done better, what you should not have done, what you did
And
right,
refine.
and refine and keep doing that. Applying that process of agile across all avenues of your life is really what Rocco is trying to teach here. Apply that to your personal relationships, your professional relationships, your
Yeah,
career, your
yeah,
passion, your
yeah,
personal growth project, all of them, right?
yeah, yeah.
And what we are doing right now is we are applying Agile to a better way. The a better way project that Rocco and I are working towards, the
That's
bridge
it.
that we are trying to build. And this, what we are doing today, is the showcase of our first product. The
That's it.
first product and the 1.0 version of that first product.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I
And
just want to bring it to everyone's attention. We are swapping hats.
mm,
Chetan was just in teaching hat mode, so he put his teacher's hat on. But then we want to get back into like just
mm,
agile project mode, and we're going to be switching between those. And I hope that you guys can tell what's happening when. Yeah.
mm,
So for me, my job is to try and stay in agile project mode, and just to bring the agile thing home for you. Just think about the ways that we used to do things, like if you want to build a house or plan a vacation or whatever the case. Some people figure out a budget, plan everything up front, do a linear itinerary. In work, what that would have looked like is somebody had an idea, then
mm,
they do some planning, they do some
mm,
feasibility, they get a
mm,
budget together, the
mm,
team comes together, they design everything, then they build what they designed, and then they deploy what they built, and then they put it out for testing, and that's maybe 6 or 9 months later, and then everybody complains because it was all a misunderstanding. What Agile
mm,
does is, instead of make it linear, like a waterfall, like I do this thing, then it cascades down into the next step, then it cascades down into the next step. What happens if there was a mistake in the first step? Now
yeah,
you've got all this momentum to unravel. It becomes very messy. So
yeah,
Agile just said we can't keep doing this because the future is uncertain, and the instructions that we get given or the wish that we had isn't always that clear, doesn't always align with reality. We kind of we thought things would be simpler in the beginning. So instead, let's find a need, let's start building
mm,
and ideating towards something, and then
mm,
let's fail fast. Let's within 2 3 weeks let's have a look at what we built, and then start pulling it apart and seeing if and seeing what sticks and what lands. And then that way it seems like a slow start, but once you've been through a few of these cycles, you actually start getting ways of working, and you start giving yourself permission to play more, because you're playing, right? You're playing towards a better outcome, a better way. And that's
yeah,
fundamentally what you're being drawn into and advised to consider as a better way.
yeah. Okay, yeah, Rocco, that's it. We've
Cool.
landed Agile, and now let's land 1.0 of WMT.
You're right. And let's
Yeah.
talk about just how that lives inside. We'll talk about a corporate book of the dead later, yeah?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
let's talk about
Mm.
that later. So maybe this time, if I don't pause the whole video, what a twit. I hit the wrong stop button. So I'm going to share my screen. Oh, and by the way, Chetan and I like to work to music.
I would have loved some music. Oh, you're putting on music, Rocco. I
I'm
love that.
putting on music.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go here to a new playlist that I was building today.
By the way, Rocco has the most insane playlists on Spotify. They're all public. If you can just find Rocco Jaman, just check out those playlists.
Oh
You
no,
will
they're
thank me
sick.
later. You will thank me as well because I introduced you to them. But Rocco is the artist there, really. I mean, that's just insane playlist, Rocco. Insane. We should publish separate videos for that only. I'm just gonna note that down.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What I can do, I wonder how I can share the music with people if they want to listen live. But we'll figure that out next time. We'll figure that out
Yeah,
next time. If anybody says anything in the chat and they say they want to listen with, I'll put the listen with link. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. So are we? Have I shared the screen? Let's
No.
get there. So this is what we saw the problem as.
Hmm.
We saw the problem
Yes.
as switching between contexts, just like
Hmm.
what browser needs screen sharing permission. What does that mean?
You're sharing. Can see.
Yeah, I don't know what its problem is.
It's all right. Yeah. Go on.
So
You're
we're
talking about the
calling
problem.
this requirement switching context.
Hmm.
which means just what happened with Chetan a second ago. He was in project mode, and then he quickly went into teacher mode, and then now he did that seamlessly, but maybe everyone following didn't know what was happening, right? So we'll be busy with our work, and then our spouse will come to the door,
Hmm.
or somebody will come and interrupt us at our desk, and we've suddenly got to stop like this and go, just, and we don't put that down in a clever way. Then we turn to them. Now we've got to get into this different mode of language. Maybe we were working with a spreadsheet, and this person's talking about a long-term plan. Maybe we're trying to write some creative writing, and this person needs help with a SQL
Grocery
query.
list.
So that context switching, because we
Hmm.
wear many hats, right?
Hmm.
But that context switching now gets complicated, and we don't know how to do it. We don't know how to do it well. So we tend to put this down in a mess, turn around, half listen, take 2 or 3 times to like catch up with what this person's saying, half help them, and then come back and then get frustrated. Where did we leave off? All right, we call that switching contexts. And it's how you switch between two or more versions of you in a day, in between chunks of your life, your work self, your home self. It's not that you're inauthentic, but Chetan did a live video on this that basically said you have to show up in a kind of different configuration.
Hmm.
Different aspects of your personality and your mental presence and whatever have to come online, right?
Yeah.
When you're with different people in different contexts. And so at work, at home, in relationship, in our containers, what I call this is our profile of authenticity. It's almost like authenticity is not a thing, it's a portfolio, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And the current profile, the current arrangement of our portfolio, in other words, there's a truth about us that we put on a dating profile. There's a
Hmm.
truth about us that we put on our LinkedIn profile. And those two are speak about the same person, but they are completely different. And not one of them is a lie. They're just different arrangements of our truth that are more relevant to those different contexts. Yeah.
Yes.
Now, what we're saying is if we can transition between those two, let's call it a well-managed transition,
Yes.
as we need to shift between those contexts. Let's call it a well-managed transition. And we're saying every single well-managed transition becomes a casting vote, uh, uh, another reinforcement of a more coherent, more present version of ourselves that can arrive in the future through our ongoing efforts. Yeah. And
Yes.
so let's look at it from the other side. If we're managing that badly, it means we're constantly incoherent. We're constantly scrabbling to try and figure out how do I put down the last conversation? How do I pick this one up? Who am I supposed to be in this moment? How does that leave us feeling? So I put it
Hmm.
over here. I feel
Yeah.
burnt out because I'm always kind of anxiously trying to play catch up
Hmm.
and trying to like be useful in the present moment. And I feel like I'm failing at that. I feel like I'm spread too thin. Like I just can't hold all the bits down that I'm supposed to hold down, right?
Hmm.
Like when you put butter on too little butter on too much toast, it doesn't quite cover everything. I feel like I'm
Hmm.
juggling plates or spinning plates or trying to keep lots of balls in the air, right? And I'm always
Hmm.
afraid that I'm going to drop one.
Hmm.
And one way of explaining it that everyone can understand is when you're browsing and working and you've got too many browser tabs open.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
And now there's music coming from one of them and you can't figure out what. And there's pop ups and there's all sorts of shit happening. And then if you've been doing web dev or something like that, or forms testing, sometimes the caching in the background gets all confused. And now you're trying to fill out a form, but it's in the background. The memory is remembering entries from an old form, and you can't put your password in, even though you've reset your password. You're refreshing and you're closing. It makes you mad. It actually
Hmm.
makes you mad. And that is actually what's happening in our life. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, to cut it down to simplest words, either I'm unable to bring my A game to any one thing that I care about in a moment, or I'm
Hmm.
doing a dozen, which is really two ways of saying the same thing. And the
Hmm.
context switching we're saying is like a normal person or the ordinary world person going into the the phone booth like Superman, and then changing into your superhero costume and flying off. And those are two different people. It's the same person underneath, but they almost are like two different outfits, two different versions of them. They have to show up with very different power levels and personas in the world. Yeah. Any questions?
No, Rocco, I think you've covered it perfectly.
Right. And so I want to bust the myth quickly. Where's the myth busting? There's this idea of work-life balance, and we're trying to we first of all we think it's only two things. So life must now be my personal development, my relationships, all of this, and then work is the other half. Like it's two sides of a scale. And as long as I can get these two things balanced, boom, then I'm perfect. And what's the myth about? The myth is about I've got to schedule the right time. I've got to block time off this after this hour. I don't take work calls.
Yeah.
But that cosmetic shit is only half the problem, right?
Yeah. It's an
Because
important half. It's an
it
important
is.
half, but it's not the end all be all, of course.
No, it
It's
isn't. And let's say, for example, you've got a wife that needs to go to a medical appointment, or you've got a child that needs to go to the dentist, or they need you to come to a morning tea so they can also have their parent there. But then you've got a project deadline arriving at the same day. That tension happens all the time.
yeah.
And trying to give loyalty across two things and never having enough of ourselves to go around causes us to feel inadequate, stressed out, unfulfilled, and we drop balls. We drop the ball. And what we're suggesting here is that there is no such thing as work-life balance, right? That's a myth. You cannot balance something that is emergent.
Yeah.
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 All you can do is create structure and observe flow. You can instill an ordering to your life, an ordering of your cadence and your rhythms and your timing, and an ordering of your structure and your form that you're operating in. Yeah.
That's really
And
the most prudent way to understand work-life balance. What we have always meant by work-life balance, right? What we have actually
yeah,
wanted is to have a structure and observe flow within that structure across all these avenues of our lives that we want to balance,
that's right.
right? Yeah.
And the structure in of itself is not, you need to be quite careful because the left brain mentality will look at the word structure and go, I'll put structure in place. But that's now the left brain trying to solve a whole of life problem. The problem is the absence of the right brain. The problem is not that the left brain hasn't come up with a clever enough left brain solution. Yeah. So the higher word above structure is ordering. Your life must come into a new form of ordering. Yeah. It's like this. Imagine in the Hindu mythos, if Indra thought he was the main god. He's not the king, he's the regent. In other words, it's an office, it's a title that he gets given, and he operates underneath like Shiva, Vishnu, and Brahma, right?
Brahma.
Now, if you imagine that Shiva, Vishnu, and Brahma don't exist, and then the things now don't work in the kingdom of the gods, and then every time something doesn't work, Indra goes and orders a new an organizational restructure. You can restructure forever. It's not the structure that's going to kill you. It's the lack of ordering. Something in the divine ordering, and we mean this archetypally, some big picture alignment to how things work fundamentally in the world. Universal principles are missing. And what we're talking about is reestablishing and realigning to those universal principles, because it's not as if any one of those parts of your life aren't going to cause you regret. You're going to make mistakes, man. You're not going to have enough to go around. How you deal with the grief of it, and how you refine, and how you get better at it, and more fluid in that. That's the game. It's not perfecting anything, right? That's the myth.
I love
Yeah.
that, Rocco.
Yeah,
I love
man.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why we have this little picture. It's not arbitrary. This little thing of the sacred game is it's a representation of that principle of emergence and of balance of emergence and of alignment. Because if that little 3 dots was not in the center of this, it would be going like this, right? It would be skew. You've got to imagine like you're zooming into a portal with three moving parts, and you're kind of coordinating like flying a spaceship through moving coordinates. Yeah, that's what you've got to see, and that actually is really accurate way of picturing what this word is: product managing your own becoming. You're navigating that journey live. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, which brings us to the user story. So, a user story always sounds like this. This is a convention in Agile where you take a requirement, a need, a pain, or something, and you frame it in the following language. It's called the so that language. So it says, as a blah, as a normal human trying to put in a superhuman effort across two or more lives, I want. And this is now where we're putting a little bit of a better way spin into it. We're saying instead of I want or I need, we say I desire. Because desire is something that comes from my true heart's calling. I desire a way to sustain my momentum and my focus across those two or more lives without compromising the other in ways that are going to, and you know what that means. I don't have to explain it. So that I can invest my energy and attention, not my time. You don't have time. Time is not yours. Time is just moving. How present you are allows time to expand or contract. And what you have to spend in that time is your budgets of energy and attention. Yeah. And if you observe renewal, like the cadences and the cycles that Chetan talked about in your day, in your agile work life, then you can renew those budgets as well. If you practice the right processes of putting down rest, retrospective renewal, etc., right? Then your budgets renew. And if you live well, your budgets renew. So as a normal human trying to put in a superhuman effort across many lives or multiple lives, I desire, it is my calling, a way to sustain my momentum and my focus, my coherence across those lives without compromising one for the other. Yeah.
Yeah.
Without losing perspective that they are multiple, that they all cohere towards something meaningful to me, so that I can invest my budgets of energy and attention towards outcomes and improvements that fulfill me, that meet with my desire, that help me product manage my own becoming. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this has to serve my whole of life actualization and calling.
Talk to me about that, Rocco.
It
Whole of
has to
life.
serve all three of those teardrops. It can't
Yeah.
just be one. When you said it to me, this is what I wrote down when we were framing the user story. You said, but it's not just this project or that project or that project. There's a Chetan Prime. There's a Rocco
Yeah.
Prime. There's a me on top of all of this. Let's call it my higher self. And I
Yeah.
don't mean higher as in holier. I mean, it's just kind of above all of these things.
Yeah.
So if those three things were like the engine room and the navigation systems and the kitchen, there is of the ship, there is still a bridge and a captain that is the boss of all of those things, and they have a vision and a journey in mind, right? And all of these three things are actually contributing towards a whole of life actualization and calling. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
that was your point that you raised. Yeah,
I like that. Yeah.
yeah. So now we now this thing called so we can either manage those transitions. All we're focusing on is this little telephone booth thing, right? It's the transition.
Yeah.
Like in the movie The Matrix, where Trinity runs to the phone booth, and then she transitions into the real world from the fake
The
world.
mate. Yeah.
Right, and sometimes that means for us a bus ride home from work. Sometimes it's a commute. Sometimes it's a walk. Sometimes it's a bicycle ride. Sometimes it's, for me, getting up from my desk and walking into the kitchen in the lounge room where I'm now starting to engage with the family. Yeah. But I'm not actually going through that transition properly. So I can manage those transitions well or badly. But now a well-managed transition, remember, is a casting vote for a more coherent and more present version of you to be in this journey. So I broke it up mentally into in repo management, like if you're working on a code base at work, there would be a sequence where you're committing your work now to the pool. You're putting it down, and you're not just working on it in memory, you're actually committing it into the branch, right?
Yeah.
what might that be an example of? Like you're locking something in for the day. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and then just like the telephone booth where you have to put the coin in, there's a cost of that call.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
Every
Hmm.
little thing has got it's another token that you have to pay into the machine. And then you've got to do the checkout sequence
Yeah.
of the next thing. I've got to take the next project or the next task off the backlog and
Hmm.
check that out and say, okay, I'm carrying this now. I'm picking this up now. That's the basic process. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a pause.
Hmm.
There's some part of this where we're winding that bit down and that bit's coming up online. And
Yeah.
we got to shut this down safely. We all
Hmm.
know what it feels like. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
When your browser crashes or your computer just gets, when Maya was little, she used to come around and she'd look on my computer. I've got a desktop on the floor, yeah,
Hmm.
a tower workstation, not a laptop. And then what does a child, the baby, play with? The thing with a light on it, and she wants to push it. And
Hmm.
then she would just, and the power would go off in the middle of a call, or I'm busy recording something or working, and all my work could be lost. Yeah? That's how it goes. That's how it goes.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
So I called these things, how do you boot up in a structured way, and how do you shut down safely? That's the way I was thinking about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, do you want to riff for a bit? Because I want to bring those archetypes up.
I think we should talk about an example of this, Rocco. Let's talk about what
Yeah,
a
you
well-managed
run with that
transition
because
would.
I can't think of one right now.
Okay. So what I'm imagining is, let's say I work a day job and I'm wrapping up my work for the day, and now I have to come back home to my wife, to my mom, to my kid perhaps, or to my other work, right? So a transition could be a transition from one state, one avenue of my life to the other. And what a well-managed transition would look like Rocco said, pause. Pause would definitely mean literally just pause and then commit. So committing whatever it is that you're working
But
on,
remember, we're
whatever
going
it
to go
is.
through the whole thing now as well, Chetan. You
Hmm.
actually want to talk about an example maybe of where it goes badly, or our normal response to that, you know?
I I usually would feel that we have talked about that. So if I've
Okay.
not done any of this, if I've not done any of this, all the agitation that the work day caused me, all the agitation that those meaningless meetings or that supremely annoying coworker, all of those things I carry with myself to my home,
Or just a
and
bug that I can't solve. I'm working on this problem, a telephone call,
perhaps
or
yes,
I'm
yes,
stuck
yes.
somewhere. That's stuckness.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And we carry all of that home to our next project, the project of our relationship with our partners, the project of managing our kids, or the project of managing our own passions. And all of those things are intertwined, and it's normal, it's human that this will happen. But
You've just
what if.
reminded me, hey,
Hmm.
that absolutely is going to happen. Man, if
Hmm.
that's not happening to you, your life is small.
Yeah.
Seriously. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, so what happens for me now is I work until the last minute, and then eventually my wife comes and knocks, and she goes, "Come on, babe, we've got to get into that gear." And
Yeah.
so I'm trying to finish it off, and I just get up and leave.
Yeah.
And I'm still dragging that through there. And then I
Hmm.
arrive there in the kitchen. I'm just not present, man. I'm all
Yeah.
over the shop. That's half the problem. Then a couple of days goes by. I play with Maya, go do some chores, blah, blah, blah. Watch TV that night, go to sleep, wake up the next morning, come and sit here. Uh, uh, where was I? What was I working on? Oh my gosh, I was right in the middle of figuring something out. I had this epic idea. I was so close.
Can't
Ah,
remember.
shit. Now I
Oh
go
no.
look for new inspiration, right? Now I've gotten to look for new inspiration 20 times. Now I've got
Hmm.
20 epic ideas in my head, and I keep having that pattern. So now I've got 20 unfinished projects that I
Hmm.
keep losing my thread of, and I go pick up project number 21. It was driving me insane, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Because
Hmm.
it took
Hmm.
too many cycles. I was spinning my wheels trying to figure out how to pick my work back up, how to drop back in here, how to pick up where I left off. It was
Yeah.
not a well managed transition. Is that a better
Hmm.
example?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly,
yeah.
exactly. That is it. Yeah. And
So
I want to
what I
add
want
something,
to,
Rocco. I want to add
what's that?
something, Rocco. I want to add something here. I
Hit
want to
it,
say
hit it.
that none of none of the spiritual teachers, none of the philosophers, none of the very intelligent intellectual people of our times of or of times past have told us how to manage this. They
Or
just
acknowledge
haven't.
that it was even a question.
Exactly. You may, perhaps, if you are from any spiritual tradition, really, the best solution you would have is to transcend all of that. Just transcend all of that and just
Oh
make
my
peace
gosh,
with the
yeah.
problem, right?
Oh,
It just
cheers. That'll help.
exactly. That's
Oh,
it. And so, but what we're
you
doing
don't
here,
transcend a toddler.
so
Yeah.
what we're doing here in a better way is literally acknowledging that this problem exists. This is a practical problem. This is something that we have to deal with. And it's high time that we acknowledge that there have to be better ways of managing just these little problems, which can actually become the biggest problems of our lives, really.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know
And
what that's
uh,
bringing to mind, hey, is that
hmm,
thing that we were ideating yesterday.
hmm,
Um, this, can I just pop it up quick?
yeah,
Uh, Man, this was such a sweet breakthrough yesterday. Chetan and I were ideating as we often do. And we're saying that if you look at the Tao,
and the
this
screen
is,
isn't showing up right now. Still
no,
waiting. It's just three dots.
no?
In the meantime, Rocco, there is a message on
Yeah, yeah,
the
hit
comment
me.
board. Someone saying, "Brother, why are you doing this live stream at this time? Suggest a better time." The account's name is Fun India. We would love to know your real name as well, but suggest a better time for us if you think there can be a better time. We
Well,
are,
this is our reality at the minute.
yeah, we're trying to manage across time zones, across people in different time zones, and Rocco and us and me in different time zones.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, go on, Rocco. Yeah, your screen's sharing now.
So, normally, what people are selling you is this, right? It's this.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's the get in line, the unlearning. Just be in mellow chill with the universe. Just transcend everything. Just be cool.
Hmm.
But this handles the being part of stuff. What about the becoming stuff?
Hmm. Hmm.
What
Hmm.
about our determination, our defiance? What about how do we how do we get somewhere? It's
Yeah.
not all just about being. It's got to be about becoming. It's not just all
Yeah.
about integrating and alignment. It's also got to be about us making our mark in the world as well. How do
Yeah.
we do that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that now is this.
Hmm.
And this is what we're teaching as the sacred game, part of which is agile, right?
Yeah.
And both of these two things are what, following both of them in balance, is the way.
The way. The
When we
way.
say
Yes.
following the way, lighting the way, opening the way, that's the way. And
Yeah.
what a better way is, it's a project designed to articulate, explain this arrangement and
Yeah.
put this into half of the equation, not assume that this is the whole of the equation.
Yeah.
This is half of the equation. Yeah?
Yeah. The truth of our time is literally that. That what
Yeah,
has
yeah.
been the truth of times past was half of the answer for this time.
Right.
And we have to acknowledge that. We have to acknowledge that. All right, Rocco. I think we are there. We've spent a lot of time building on this. Let's now talk about a WMT.
Right. So this is the product fundamentally in a picture, because
Hmm.
this should be something that we can create a poster of and put on our wall.
Yeah.
We should be able to put a screenshot on our phone. Ideally, if you understand this and you just have a little icon of a telephone booth,
That should do
it,
it.
it, it
Yeah.
should trigger and relate to all of this context for you. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the idea.
Yeah.
Now, what I've got for you here is, if you want to like explore the deep thought about all of this, you got a Substack, the
Hmm.
Thought Leader Substack. It's roccojarman.substack.com. Yeah.
We'll link the
And
article down below. Yeah. Oh, in fact, we
yep,
already have.
that's it.
We already
And
have.
then you'll
Yeah.
see this is the thumbnail. It says Living Across Two Lives. It's got Mark Scout from Severance. He's running down that meaningless corridor. And here I'm basically unpacking the problem, right?
Hmm.
And then part two is under a section called the Corporate Book of the Dead. And here's the actual product that you can
Hmm.
test. Here it talks you through every slide. It's got the user story. We debunked the myth. I break it down so you can digest it in your own time. We talk about what we're trying to do, switching between contexts, and then we have the thing, and we've got it all written out here
Yeah.
in detail, yeah? On how to do it,
Yeah.
how to follow.
Mm.
Yep. So you can follow that way if you want. So now the actual context switch, this works both ways. It works whether you're at work switching into a personal context or vice versa or between.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
There's
Mm.
always going to be some kind of a trigger that means it's now the end of this session.
Yeah.
That can be event driven, like a calendar at the end of a work block,
Mm.
the end of a meeting, the end of a work day,
Mm.
or it can be, it can be time driven, which is those things that I've just described, or it can be the
Mm.
event, like such as an interruption or
Yeah.
uh, 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 your wife calls or an
Mm.
alarm goes off and you go, oh, that's it. I've got to change context. I've got to go to
Mm.
this. My daughter comes
Mm.
walking into the room and she's crying. That's the
Yeah.
event. Yeah?
Yeah.
The first thing I need to do is a tactical pause. Now imagine, have you ever watched the Star Trek show when you were a kid?
No, Rocco. I'm gonna
Do you know the
disappoint you
corp?
on
You,
that.
you know the cult? Did you watch the movies or anything like this? Okay.
No.
The
No.
premise of the movie was it's a future human society, and they are flying spaceships, and they've got futuristic technology, and the story follows the adventures of one crew on board one spaceship, where they are exploring new worlds, and they've got a new exciting challenge every week. Yeah,
Mm. Mm. Mm.
and like surprises happen all the time, and then the kind of adventure begins. We're thinking of that kind of context, yeah, and I'll keep
Mm.
referencing that and bringing that in as we go.
Mm.
So the first thing we need to do now is we need to do a tactical pause. We need to clear our cache. That means as we're winding down the shift, it's not just that the engineering room of the ship can just stop and go and eat lunch or go eat dinner. They have to do like an overnight process to get everything organized. And if there was any significant problems, they've got to call the captain on the bridge and say, Captain, this is the current problem we're working on, or this is an opportunity that we could increase
Mm.
performance. And then they report to the bridge. There's a higher version of ourselves,
Mm. Mm. Mm.
yeah, that needs to know what the big picture deal is. And that
Mm.
pause is
Mm.
the act of invoking this higher version of ourself, this
Mm.
overarching Chetan Prime or Rocco Prime or the captain of our journeys, yeah,
Mm. Mm. Mm.
the
Mm.
the big boss.
Yeah. Yeah. So you gotta add a log entry for the big boss.
No, it's just to bring him in the room.
Okay.
This
Okay. Mm.
pause over here,
Ah. Okay.
that
Mm.
act, that's your invocation to find this higher version of yourself and bring them online.
Yeah.
They don't come
Yeah.
online by itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
You've got to.
True. True. True.
That's what the tactical pause means. It
Yeah.
means, oh, I'm not thinking of this as work Chetan or relationship Chetan or cooking dinner Chetan. I'm thinking of this as overarching product owner Chetan. He's coming online looking at the whole thing from that bird's eye view, from that higher perspective. That's the guy
Mm.
that's in the room, yeah?
Mm. Mm.
And we do this thing called clearing your cache. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Mm.
So now we've got to shut down. And the reason we want the higher version of ourselves in the room is we don't want to be too granular. We don't want to be too focused on the small thing we were working on or on the interruption. We want to have the perspective across both those things.
Mm.
So we ask ourselves metaphorically, what tabs are open? There might be actual tabs on your browser, or there might just be multiple threads that you've going on in your thinking, right?
Yeah.
Now, some
Yeah.
of these are not physical or
Mm.
not visual objects. There can be energetic signatures in your body. There can be anxieties, tightnesses in the stomach, problems that you're chewing through, that you're holding on to, that you're not even
Mm.
breathing properly. Yeah.
Mm. Mm.
All of
Mm.
those tell you different kinds of browser tabs that are open.
Yeah.
And you've now got to do a thing we call sentencing. You've got to decide across all of these tabs, which ones can you just close? waste of time, noise, clutter, close, close, close. But you got to do that with discernment. Yeah.
Mm.
Because not all of the tabs were just about this work that you were busy with. That's why you need the captain's eye in the room. He's going to look at all these tabs and say, okay, this is relevant to tell the wife. This is something about planning that holiday we were talking about. This is, oh yes, I have to phone the bank in the morning. Some of those are like that. You want to save these too. Now, some of them you want to make bookmarks for. You don't just want to have a list of 1,000 bookmarks, because if you're saving everything down and it's all just an endless pile, then it's as good as there being nothing.
Yeah.
And sometimes you actually want to write it down in offline memory. You've actually got to put it in your journal. So I actually have a journal next to my desk, and I just have a little entry on the date, 1st of May, and I write little notes for myself when I'm just about to close off. So I remember this one I wanted to write down. This is what I was working on. This is the question that I was sitting with. This is the metaphor that I was playing with. Just little scribble notes,
Yeah.
nothing formal.
Mm.
And then I write a log entry. I'm imagining that I'm sitting down at my work desk or in my workstation, and I'm going to get up and somebody else might come in. Some person that doesn't have all of this thoughts and understanding and memory present in their mind. I need to write a handover for them. Now, it's not like they don't know anything about the job, but they don't know exactly what I was sitting with and what the problem was, which lights were blinking, which tabs were open. So I write little breadcrumbs for myself or for that
Yeah.
guy. And I
Yeah.
make it
Yeah.
out like it's going to be a stranger version of me that I don't know yet. You know, I haven't met this guy yet. He hasn't arrived yet. He hasn't woken up out of the bed tomorrow yet.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then I leave that note for myself, breadcrumbs, little diagrams, post-it notes in my diary, whatever it is, and I actually write that change log, that captain's log. And then I grease the wheels for the next shift. I say to myself, what can I do that's going to make my life a little bit more organized when I come back? How's it going to make me easier to pick all this back up? Let me save my files properly. Let me rename that folder. Let me organize my desk. Let me put those post-it notes, arrange them neatly in order. That's what I mean by greasing the wheels. It's just arranging your space in such a way. You gave up with a good example the other day. You said that would be like ironing my shirt the night before, so that tomorrow morning I don't have to scramble and figure that part of the problem out. That's greasing the wheels. Yeah. Yeah.
True. True. Yeah.
And then here's the important thing: close the space. Kind of ceremonially. You've got to now say, okay, thank you, this version of whoever, all done, stand down, job done. This is effectively one half of a well-managed transition. The captain goes, fist bump, and then you report to the bridge and say, I'm done.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You can't just close space and walk out. Close space implies like this reporting to the bridge is important. You've got to give the report to the bridge, update, yeah? And then you've got to report or revert back to the bridge. You actually have to enter into the persona of your higher self, this guy that came online here. Yeah? Because this liminal step is where you cross this river of forgetfulness, this invisible space, this the abyss. Even in Matrix, right? When they went into the telephone lines, there was this in between, right? It was called the train station. Remember that? The in between worlds. Now, the in between is no less important. Let's just talk about it. This is the liminal step. All transitions from the caterpillar to the butterfly, from an adolescent to adulthood, even between these different versions of lives that we live in a single day, in between all of these, there's a liminal space, an in between. And this is not the void of death where nothing happens that we think it is. And it's also not like when you go to the hospital and you get given anesthetic and you just stop existing and then you start existing somewhere else. There's some version of a continuation of you that's
Mm.
neither in this body nor in that body. So it's like the space between incarnations. Yeah. Now,
Mm.
most
Mm.
of us skip this step, but this is where the magic happens actually in all of this. Because remember, when we paused, when we hit that tactical pause, the captain comes online here, this higher self,
Mm.
right? Then he takes off this uniform, the Superman outfit, right?
Mm.
And then he goes into the telephone booth,
Mm. Mm. Mm.
this liminal space, right? Now he needs to know what was my intentionality, what was my vector, what was the the vector of my soul. This is why we call it the corporate book of the dead, because I'm
Mm.
actually doing a ritual to steer the intentionality of my soul for a better arc of engagement in its next life.
In the next
I'm
life.
playing
Correct.
with these
Yes.
ideas,
Yes. Yes.
tongue in cheek, cheek in tongue.
That's it. That's it.
And we skip this step. We don't even acknowledge that it's a thing. This is why we fear death, right? We
Mm.
rush from one context to the next without realizing what we are leaving behind or what we are stepping into. We don't step through.
Mm. Mm.
We
Mm.
don't ritualize that disruption. We don't ritualize that transformation. And this is where disorientation begins.
Mm.
The well managed transition protocol creates room for this step, and it formalizes the space between worlds. In Greek
Mm.
mythology, it was called Tartarus, the underworld, right? And
Mm.
there is an ordering there. There is some kind of principles of coherence that still need to happen.
Mm.
And nothing could be more necessary, right? This is an
Mm.
idea that we're exploring playfully, but also quite seriously in the
Mm.
corporate book of the dead, because our corporate culture makes no room for this reality whatsoever.
Yeah.
And then if we don't ritualize our own disruptions and transitions, we do not really optimize our transformation and transcendence. And these are just a different way of talking about actualization or becoming. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Rocco, can I ask you something?
please,
What would a liminal step look like? So let's say
ah,
I am transitioning from my work to my home.
mm,
A regular every day in my office. I'm coming back to work. So I have wrapped up my work. I've checked in the code. I've left the breadcrumbs. I have done everything that I had to, so that the next time I'm tuning back into work, I know what I was working on. I have a fair idea what I'm working on. So I've done all of that.
mm,
I'm logging off from this shift and I'm transitioning back to my personal life. But there's this in between. What
mm.
would managing the in between look like? Give me an
Okay.
example there. Yeah.
Let me tell you how I solve such problems.
Hmm.
This is the thing that the left brain can't solve,
Hmm.
because this is beyond the context of the left brain, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So now we need to look in the context of the right brain. This is the
Hmm.
language of imagination, of archetypes, of stories, of tropes. So now we need to find a metaphor that explains this. And the one that I came up with last time is: imagine you are putting on a one-man show on a stage,
Hmm.
and it's got different characters, and each of those
Hmm.
characters have different lines, different personalities, different outfits. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
But there's an audience the show has to be coherent.
Hmm.
It can't be just like a 3-year-old, like Maya, when she's putting on a show. 5 seconds she's this, and then she's the dragon, and
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
that's just the manic play of a toddler. Beautiful imagination, but it's not coherent.
Hmm. Hmm.
The main thing is we're trying to, if you were that person, and you had work Chetan,
Hmm.
he was the engineer, and
Hmm.
then you had the king, the priest, the father, the husband, the rabbi, some version of you that's going to be now at home. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
They have different outfits, but then you're on the stage and you're delivering your lines, and then you go backstage behind the curtain and you change. But when you're changing, you're not just a nothing. There is some version of you that is above the story, that is coordinating and directing the coherence to say, okay, this guy's coming off. This is where we are on the story now. That means the transition now, he's going to put on this outfit and go onto stage. He's got to start getting into this mode. Somewhere there is a conversation happening or
Hmm.
direction happening. If you think of
Hmm.
an actor and a director,
Hmm.
you just
Hmm.
need to
Hmm.
understand that you are also the director.
Hmm. Hmm.
And
Hmm.
if the
Hmm.
director is not present and the
Hmm.
one actor is just scrambling to change outfits into the next one, it's
Hmm.
comical, it's ridiculous, and it means that there wasn't that coherence, there wasn't that direction.
Hmm.
And so that
Mm.
direction that you apply to yourself, it's this higher self. And it doesn't mean a higher self in a mystical sense. It
Mm.
just means somebody that's slightly above, slightly transcendent of that
Yeah.
project,
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
project
Yeah.
A and project B, that sees the how projects A, B, and C all kind of come together.
Mm.
So I use archetype, and I'm imagining now,
Mm.
I'm going backstage, and I'm also just checking how was that performance? How did I show up? What can I learn from it? What can I? But I don't just bring that guy on when I run backstage.
Mm.
Because
Mm.
I did this pause back here,
Mm.
because I did this pause, he comes online here already. And he's kind of managing the transition, if we're honest with ourselves,
Mm.
right?
Mm. Mm.
And then he manages this. He's the higher mind thinking in all of this. And then he just breathes and steps into this and goes, ah, breathe
Mm.
out. And so instead of getting here and doing a raw retro,
Mm.
I start thinking like I did during my 20-day live. Okay, the end is coming. How would I like to end this? How do I want this phase to be remembered? How do I want to end this meal with my wife? How do I want to end this session with Maya? How do I want to end this call with Chetan? I want to now start bringing my best self online so I can salvage and cohere and direct, because I'm going to be so much happier in the liminal space. I'm really going to rest in between lives here now,
Yeah.
because I
Mm.
paid the ferryman. I gave the coin. I put the
Mm.
thing in. I did the a bigger vision was at play when I was closing down. Yeah.
Mm.
Is
Mm.
that
Mm.
making sense?
Perfect sense, Rocco. Perfect sense.
Excellent.
Yes. Yeah.
So then I do a kind of reverse of that now. I start
Mm.
saying, what's the messages I need to pass on to this next guy? What's
Mm.
salient? Did I remember everything? Is there anything I would like to just tie a bow and cross a T and dot an I and fix a small something?
Mm.
And this is, I'm not going to do it perfectly for the first time. I'm going to have
Mm.
to repeat this again and again and again. It's going to look like this, right? Over time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because then
In this
that one needs to
sequence.
wind down and commit. Then the
Ah.
next, and this one
Yeah.
actually could be this guy. Here's self
Mm.
two, and here's
Yeah.
self one. Now I'm
Yeah.
back to self one again,
Yeah.
right? And this could be sleep, or it could be the train ride home.
Mm.
But it
Mm.
looks like that, yeah?
Yeah.
So now we do the other thing. We arrive here and we just do a pause. We just make sure the captain is the one setting the tone here, the director,
Mm. Mm.
right?
Mm. 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 Mm.
We take our stage direction. Somebody's
Mm.
calling from the side. It's called the prompt box. You know, they're giving directions from the side of the
Mm.
stage.
Mm.
Then we open the space. Now, if we're doing this in a cyclic way, it means we closed the space.
Mm.
I sometimes even mark the Spotify playlist I was listening to.
Oh, I've started to do that too, Rocco.
Yes. So that
Yeah.
the next time I restore my browsers, I found the last things, I open them up again. I know which
Yeah.
article I was doing. I know where I was in the article. I know which picture I was drawing in PowerPoint. And then I put the music on, and then okay. And I boot up. I
Yeah.
check my last log entry. I open my little book. I read it and I try and make sense of it. It's not always perfect, but that
Yeah.
becomes an
Of course.
instruction for me on how to do it better next time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I follow the breadcrumbs, and then I let the captain do a shift briefing. And the shift
Mm.
briefing works like a stand up.
Mm.
Where's everyone today? The guy that arrives back at my desk today is not the same guy that closed off the session a day ago or
Yeah.
even an hour ago.
Yeah.
One phone call,
Mm.
one meme that he saw, one
Mm.
song that he listened to, one thing that happened changed him
Mm. Mm.
or
Mm.
her.
Mm.
And now I've got to initiate myself back into this is a new guy now, and the work is kind of new. And the thing that I was writing yesterday no longer is relevant. I've realized this is a dumb idea. I need to,
Mm.
okay,
Mm.
that's the
Mm.
stand up.
Mm. Mm.
What are
Mm.
your
Mm. Mm.
blockers? What's happening today? What do you need? Like a agile stand up, yeah?
Yeah.
That's where
Yeah.
everyone just goes down the room and they talk about where they are.
Yeah.
And when that boot up sequence, you know, part of the success of an operating system is not just all the things that it runs, it's
Mm.
the order in which it brings them online, because there's a
Mm.
dependency chain. Yeah. And
I like
so
that. Yeah.
you start bringing the things online at the right time, and then you initiate the shift. You go, okay, engage, make it
Yeah.
so. And that's a reference to Star Trek, where the character used to say, engage, make it so. Like he's now saying, I've set course, hit it. You know, now I've created this, the play, the structure, or the framing, make it happen, hit
Yeah.
play. So it actually looks like a pause and a play button, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I can see that.
Yeah.
So beautifully explained, Rocco. Really, I love this, man. I, l-
Yeah.
I love how you've talked about how do you shut down safely from oneself to the other, and then how do you boot up your next self. You've talked about the liminal step in between, which is something we don't usually hear about, but that's so essentially important. And
Yes.
mind you, you've actually touched upon the fact that we cannot really have a proper structure, a left brain ta 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 structure to that liminal step. It's supposed to be an archetype. It's supposed to be more
Mystical, transcendent,
mystical. Yes, yes, exactly.
intangible.
Yeah,
You know, you've got to think
intangible.
of
That's
the
the word.
caterpillar and the butterfly. There is a bigger plan happening the whole time.
Yeah.
That is not the butterfly and it's not the caterpillar. It's a something else, right? What is happening in that space? Yeah, yeah. And who's driving that process? So now, what are we actually asking people to do? We're asking them to take that one image, digest this, watch this
Yeah.
video, understand it. We've now demonstrated basically how to use it, right? If you've got questions, guess how you solve them? Ask. Right. We don't want to spoon feed anyone. We want to attract people that want to be part of this. Now, what we're looking for is we're looking for testers. We're
Yeah.
looking for people who want to volunteer in our community to say, I'll be a tester, I'll take this home, and I'll start implementing it. Okay? So that I can come and tell you what works and what doesn't work, how it changed my life, so I can add testimony so that the pool of knowledge and experience and understanding in the community is improved. You can help grow the community, play your part by picking this up and testing it in prod.
Yeah. You're
Do
proud.
you want
You're proud.
do you want to product manage your own becoming as a leader constructively, or do you want to just keep on acting reactively for the rest of your life? This is how to do it, yeah? So
That's
I'm
it,
going to be
man.
testing this. I'm already testing this.
Same with me, yes. And you know what, Rocco, to do justice to our community too, I will come up with much shorter, concise videos talking
Yes,
about
yes,
this
please.
exact thing, examples, and perhaps you can come up with a book which people can, for people who are not too interested in videos,
Booklet.
they can actually, a booklet
A
really, yes,
booklet. Yeah,
maybe
just
just
a
a 10,
short booklet.
15 page booklet, just talking about this, giving out examples so that it's just that much easier to digest. And of course, if anyone wants the complete picture, they can always refer to this video, which will always be online in a better way. And that's it.
You
That's
can
it,
share
Vinny.
it with your colleagues and with your work partners and with your spouse or whomever, and then
Yeah.
this can now become an operating model that you use to improve your life.
Yeah.
That someone else can then you both are speaking the same kind of language. When somebody has arrived in a space and they haven't transitioned in well, you can say, "Hey, man, that wasn't a well managed transition. Here's some advice." But now you're talking from a place of knowledge and of solid foundation here. Yeah. So
Yeah. That's it.
you'll do some videos. I'll put together a
Mm.
booklet. We're not going
Yeah.
to overcook it.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
Right? This is not for children.
Mm.
You
Mm.
know,
Mm.
this is for people who have got ownership over their own lives. That's who we want. That's
Yeah.
who we want to attract.
Yeah.
That kind of person, somebody who feels a sense of ownership over
Yeah.
their own product management of their own
Yeah.
becoming. You know.
I'll say people who will click on a video that's about work life balance, not with the intention of blaming why their life is out of balance, but with the intention of someone who's wanting to be responsible for balancing their life. That's the kind of person I
Somebody
want.
who's looking for being part of the solution.
That's it. Yes. And solution
Yeah.
not just for us, really, not just for every single human being out there, but firstly, solution for yourself, taking responsibility for your own self. And of course,
Yeah.
once you do that, it's just almost obvious that you will contribute to the bigger solutions. You just
That's it.
will. Yeah.
All right, man. So
That's
I
it,
don't. I
Rocco.
think we've gone on long enough.
Yes. Yes.
I'm just trying to think what else there is. Oh,
Hmm.
I wanted to close with one thing here. At the end of the article, which you'll share, I
Mm.
say spiritual insight.
Mm.
Now, I
Mm.
want to be clear about this. That liminal space, that version of ourself that was holding space for that direction, that captain's call, that conversation, the in between,
Mm.
yeah,
Mm. Mm.
that is what we call the inner life. To have an inner life, to have an inner conversation.
Mm. Mm.
It's the conversation you need to develop, cultivate, deepen.
Mm.
That actually becomes the the sacred foundation of all of this. You have to
Mm.
develop your own inner life, yeah? And it has
Yeah.
to become rich and deep. Now we all have an inner life, whether we leave it unattended or we choose to cultivate it.
Yeah.
And this inner life shapes how we experience everything, what we believe is possible, right?
Mm. Mm. Mm.
When we use the word spiritual, this is all that we mean, nothing more. It's just the quality of your inner life. That's it. And the spiritual insight then to consider with a well managed transition, or any practice that we employ to product manage our own becoming, or any project in life for that matter, is this complementary principle between form and flow, the banks of a river and the water
But
moving down between it.
yeah.
This is the yin and the yang, the masculine and the feminine. We don't mean boys and girls or men and women. We mean these two fundamental principles. Yeah. So if you think of a river, the flow is the water rushing down. The river banks
Mm.
and the channel provide form. And without
Mm.
that form, the creative power and energy of that movement can become destructive and chaotic.
Mm.
Yeah?
Mm. 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 Mm.
Form gives requires structure and flow requires cadence. So the structure we'll tell you in a minute, but the flow, the cadence is these agile cycles that you want to start in training to. And this is why we regard Agile as the master practice and why we organize our lives around distinct project fronts in one sense and a cadence of cycles and iterations in another.
Mm.
Structure gives each domain its own space.
Mm.
Cadence gives us rhythm and momentum across time, and together they create the conditions for steady, meaningful growth without collapse or burnout. And if you think of that river, the gradient, that here is a mountain and here is the sea, that's what we call ordering. Ordering, that's this higher principle that sits above form and flow. It sits
Mm.
above yin and yang. It's the way that we're
Mm.
trying to describe, yeah? And
Mm.
isn't it
Mm.
so
Mm.
wonderful? Isn't it so wonderful? I actually want to share one last picture.
Mm. Sure.
Isn't it so wonderful that the word tantra means weaving?
Mm. Oh, yes.
Because we're threading these three things together to make an emergent braid.
Mm.
That's the cord
Mm.
of our life that we're strengthening,
And
right?
you
So
know,
you
it's
could imagine
always
making this
happening.
perfect bonsai. One of
Mm.
the branches of that is your work life. One of them is your relationship, but the whole of it, the whole of this is your yourself, you know.
Yourself. Yeah.
And the bonsai is never perfect, sterile. It's perfectly imperfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm also playing with this idea of the roots because there's a whole rich life underneath the ground. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what we want you guys to remember is that all of this whole idea can be invoked just by considering either the letters WMT, well managed transition,
Mm.
or by just the telephone box, just a
Yeah.
phone booth.
Yeah.
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 And this is the power of a better way, is that we are joining the left and the right brain, the spiritual and the practical, the yin and the yang, and we're bringing it all together in a coherent thing and teaching you not rules of what you should or shouldn't do or how to play the game. How to play
Better.
the game. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it.
That's it, Rocco.
So next
And
steps, we need testers, we need volunteers. You need to put your name up. You need to do a call with Chetan,
yeah.
just a brief Chetan might create like a little structure or set of
Hmm.
instructions. There's things you're going to need to answer to fill out, like a kind of logbook of what you did, because we
Hmm.
don't want people just rocking up here, throwing 10 cents comments at the problem.
Hmm.
If we don't find any volunteers, that's okay. Chetan and I will do it.
Hmm.
Um, and we'll report back in what, 2 weeks?
Perhaps, yes. I think that should work. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But next week, what are we doing next week, Chetan?
Next week, I think we can talk about actually the way, the auto AI, what you talked about. I think that can
Otawaya.
be, yeah, yeah. How do you pronounce it again?
Otawaya.
Auto AI. Auto where?
Otawaya. Otawaya.
Where?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Otawaya.
Yeah. Or
Mm.
I mean, we can come up with something. I think that can be one separate topic in itself to describe to everyone who's willing to understand and
What
is
is the
ready to
sacred game?
understand. Yeah, the sacred game.
Yeah.
All right, Rocco. Do you have anything else to add? I think we
No,
can
man.
wrap up. Yeah.
I'm pretty happy with the way this went.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we can actually start closing the space now and think about.
Hmm.
Is there any questions from anyone?
No, not today. Not today. Yeah. All right. I think what Rocco and I will be doing now is closing down this call, taking a pause, leaving breadcrumbs, leaving our log entries, so that when we are back again into a better way, headspace, we know what we were discussing, what we were talking about, what we wanted to build forward. Because we have our lives to lead after this. This is a
Yeah, we're going to
Sunday.
now actually practice this thing live.
Actually, yes, that's it. That's it.
Right. If there were folks around here, this is where we would do like a Q&A and a loose chit chat and a. But if
Hmm.
there's nothing yet, there's nothing yet. C'est la vie.
Yeah, that's about it. All right, then. I think we can close off this space. Thank you for anyone who joined. Thank you for listening. If you're listening this later on, you know how you can reach out to us. And that's about it. Follow us on A Better Way Substack. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. And we'll see you next week. Until next time, peace out.
Cheers, everyone.